to infinity and beyond.
Everyone, it's Roger and James here from DisKingdom.com. In this episode, we're going to be talking about EA's kind of recent sort of review during a sort of an interview where they were saying that players aren't interested in single-player linear games anymore, and of which point caused a complete stink across the internet. I don't know whatever's going on over in EA's press department, I don't think they've been tuned into the year at all.
Well, it's definitely not been a good year for people who need to do PR on Star Wars or Marvel video games.
No.
So
yeah, Disney had a year off for this, but yeah, it's like this game just keeps they just keep putting their foot on it. They just keep putting it. It's like,
yeah. This one isn't actually specific to Battlefront. They're actually talking about the game that got yanked from, what was it, Visceral.
Yeah.
And on the one hand, I completely agree that this is not at all, the way you treat your fan base. You don't tell your fan base what they like and what they don't like.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if we translate it, what they're really saying is there are not enough people who will pay full price for a single-player linear video game for us to justify the cost, which, on the one hand, is a really, really stupid statement, but on the other hand, as a person who is a fan of single-player linear games, because of just you get in, you get out, and you finish it, I got to admit, more often than not, I'm not willing to pay a $60 price point for a 6 to 8 hour experience.
Yeah, I mean, I am someone that likes playing single-player linear games where you do it, you jump into the story, you go through, you finish the game, and you move on, right?
It's great.
That's what game has been since I was a kid. Once you got bored of it or you finished it, for me, there is nothing more satisfying than the credits. Take the disc out and you go, I'll never play you again because I've got someone else sat there shiny new to play. It's that feeling of completion when you finish a thing. Now, obviously, this kind of ties into that Star Wars game being yanked because they viewed that it wasn't going the way it wanted. It was going to be too big, or there was no way of doing the microtransactions kind of things. Now, EA are going down this line of online services. They've been talking about like FIFA and stuff, of just doing the annual rollout, just having an online server that people pay for. And we just recently did an episode about our Game of the War predictions. And you look at all the games, and they are all linear. Wolfenstein, Breath of the Wild, Horizon Zero Dawn, Super Mario Odyssey.
I don't know. Would you call Breath of the Wild a linear game? It's a pretty open world game. Yeah, there's a linear story.
There's a linear story, but it's a single player. Yeah.
But you can go anywhere you want. Yeah. You can do that story at your own pace, and I think that's what they're talking about. You've got the linear story, which is like Wolfenstein 3D, or the Battlefront 2 single player mode, which is literally boom, 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 checkpoint, 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 done. And then there's Breath of the Wild or Horizon Zero Dawn, where yes, there is that linear story, and you can choose to follow it. But you know what? There's a giant hunk of metal off this way, and I'm going to go see what's at the giant hunk of metal. That's what they're talking about.
I suppose for me now, that especially with those kind of games and things like Assassin's Creed and Watch Dogs 2 and Grand Theft Auto, I think the way I play is very much kind of like I do just go from story to story to story. I've kind of got used to the concept of all this other miscellaneous side stuff. I've stopped worrying about, and collectathons and all this stuff. And I think because I do play it, probably like it as maybe Breath of the Wild was, but Breath of the Wild literally for me was shrine, go through each of the 4 bosses and then go to the main game. That was kind of how I played it, so I felt like I was constantly on a mission. Same with Horizon Zero Dawn. I was trying to get to that next point, which was flashing, and so that was constantly driving me forward. So that's kind of, I think that might be my play style, which is very linear.
I have a very similar play style. I will do certain collectibles so long as they will power up my character. Like, I'm not into the Assassin's Creed find the feathers kind of thing, which is just find all the feathers to unlock a short little video. I'm like, I'll just go watch that on YouTube instead. And granted, they did take the feathers out of Assassin's Creed Origins, but if I'm going to do it in Horizon Zero Dawn, it'd be, you better power up my weapons for doing this, that kind of thing. And just because you and I may play the game more linearly, Most people, you talk to them about like Breath of the Wild, they're like, oh yeah, I found 100 of the shrines. I'm still trying to find the last couple. I'm like, you do that. That's
yeah. It's like the one that went after all the Korok seeds. Like,
but the point. The point is they've got the choice.
End. Yeah, I was going to say. I remember getting to the end. I think I only got 12 Korok seeds by the time I beat Ganon. I just wasn't interested.
Yeah, but the point is we have the choice.
Yes.
Whereas Battlefront 2, your choice is I can either replay the mission I just did, or I can go on to the next mission. There's no, I'm going to go see what's going on over there, and we're going to have an X-Wing battle, and then when I come back, my blaster will be stronger kind of thing. No, it's all right, you're going from Takodana, and now you're at, the observatory or whatever, and that's what EA is talking about. They don't think that there's enough of a market for people to sell a full-price game that is just going from point A to point B to point C to point D, and I get their point, but at the same time, you phrased it very badly, and you're insulting your own customer base.
Yeah, so. I mean, they've definitely had. I mean, they've seemed to have had a very. They seem out of step. They're trying to. The data. The trouble is, the data tells one thing, and it's like anything with these kind of games. They kind of turn around and go, "Well, these people spend this much time in multiplayer and only this much time in single player." And we want the you're chasing the multiplayer because you want the money for what's playing there. The simple fact is there's a massive audience that wanted, Call of Duty. There's a lot of people that just jump in, do the campaign, do a few multiplayer matches, I'll be doing the same, and then you get out. And that is what that's what people associate with those games, is what was missing from Battlefront. When Battlefront 2 did it, it wasn't quite long enough to warrant what it was. It might be after next week's expansion. It might boost it out a little bit. But generally, I just think EA, I mean, they've been kind of deemed as like, they have kind of become the emperor of the video game world, because they just seem to have just been out of step, out of line, just not feeling quite tone deaf to what people have been saying. And while they backtracked on loot crates and they put them back in, and they just feel like whoever's been doing their press people, they just need to maybe just be quiet and have the rest of the year off, and because they're really not helping.
Yeah, I mean, what they're saying might be true, but that doesn't mean you want to say it. And you can go and talk to some of the other game companies that have been working on Marvel and Star Wars franchises. You can talk to Capcom about the whole X-Men comments that they made. They're given mandates on making certain amount of money, or you can't use the X-Men characters, or you can't have Star Wars characters crossing over between eras or something like that, which obviously is a bunch of nonsense anyway, but it's left to the PR guys to be like, yes, no one actually remembers the X-Men, and everyone's just getting there going, what are you saying? And I kind of don't envy him for that, but at the same time,
I also
you don't need to say that stupid
stuff. I also
stuff.
feel as well, EA, they've got this Star Wars license, and I'm actually looking forward to when they don't have the single license anymore, because personally, I do not feel they are the right fit for Star Wars games, because while Star Wars Battlefront, they might be great at making an online shooter, they do not have the idea to me of what makes Star Wars is about stories, it's about characters, and EA just don't seem to get that anymore. They're about online infrastructures they need, there's so many other teams out there making much better story, Imagine what the people for like Ninja Theory could have done with a 8 to 12 hour linear storyline for Star Wars, like they did with Hellblade, or and I do think that once EA loses license, Disney will just start going, right, you can make this, and you can make this, and you can make this, because EA, I don't think they've got their one thing that they like to do, and they've I don't think they fit Star Wars anymore.
Well, I don't think it's a matter of whether or not EA fits Star Wars or anything like that. EA, like you said, they've got their gameplay style, and that will work with Star Wars. However, and this is true of any exclusivity clause, when you don't have competition, you don't have any reason to push the envelope. And we saw that with Battlefront 2.
Yeah.
It's a very generic game once you strip away the Star Wars elements. It's a very pretty game. The sound design is awesome. The single player is fun, and we'll talk about that more this week in our spoiler review, but it's still a very generic experience. There is nothing to this game that is groundbreaking, except for how viciously monetized it is, which is not something you want to be proud of. I would like EA to still maintain the license, but let other companies play with it too, like you're talking about, because that forces you to go, not only am I competing with Call of Duty, not only am I competing with Horizon Zero Dawn, but I'm competing with other Star Wars games as well, and that means I've got to bring my A game.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's going to get lost in the shuffle.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, like Force Unleashed is a prime example of what you probably, a linear game where you're running through, doing the missions, a really fun game. And unfortunately, something like that just can't be made with EA, because they just will not make that, because, it's not going to be... When they say profitable, it's because they can't microtransaction it. They can't expand. Well, if they're only going to spend 12 hours on it, then it's like, well, that's what... Not every game can be this more wide open, like, multiplayer thing, because not everyone wants to play that. And they need somebody else away, and I think, at least now with Marvel, where they are getting people... Marvel realised that there's different kinds of games. So Spider-Man is different to Marvel Puzzle Quest, where EA just said, "Oh, just slap a Star Wars skin on it and that'll do," kind of thing. And that's, I don't know. I think EA have completely shot themselves in the foot this year with Star Wars, to the point where I think I don't think it's going to bring in as much money as the last game did, and I think Disney are going to be like going, "Yeah, you really messed us," and you closed this. They've just brought bad publicity to Star Wars games all year this year.
Yep, and on the other hand, the memory term of most video gamers is extremely short. So we'll see what happens next year, because, they might turn those microtransactions back on in the beginning of January, beginning of February.
They've put them back up. They've adjusted things around already.
Right. Well, yeah. And we'll see what happens. Because, like I said, our memory as gamers tends to be very short. The damage has been done, but the game has the Star Wars name attached to it. Battlefront 2 will never truly die until Battlefront 3 comes out in 2 or 3 years. And it will probably continue to rake in money for EA and Disney. And if that's all that they see at the end of the day, then that's the way it's going to be from there out.
I still have a feeling that when you've got Star Wars plastered across the Wall Street Journal about how bad a game is, and you've got Bob Iger having to say about stuff, the men in the suits have remembered that this has just brought them bad publicity, and I think that will sour that kind of... And especially if the sales are down. If they went, "Well, you sold 14 last time. Oh, you've only sold 7, 8. I think there's going to be some very hot meetings coming up, because, and I don't think even if EA had sold 20 million copies and it was the best-selling video game of all time, I still think EA will lose the single franchise anyway.
Well, they probably will, and that was probably always going to be the case. But again, keep in mind, even if it doesn't sell as much as the first Battlefront, if the microtransaction revenue stays consistent over 2 years, it could still end up making more money than Battlefront 1. It might not meet their projections because of all the bad publicity, but if it still manages to beat Battlefront 1 in terms of long-term revenue, that's all that's going to matter at the end of the day.
But we'll have to know, it's definitely going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see what goes on in this one. But we'd love to know your thoughts on this. Comment below or get in touch with us on social media or join our Facebook group as well, and DisKingdom Gaming. As per usual, you can go check us out on the website, DisKingdom.com. You can, if you're listening to this on the audio device, you can subscribe there, and you can also leave us a review as well. That would be awesome. And if you're watching us on YouTube, you can hit that subscribe button as well. Thank you very much for watching. Where can they find you, James?
Find me heroiclegacy.com.
And on that note, guys, thank you very much for watching and listening. We shall see you guys soon. Later.